In this section, let's take a look at how companies calculate the cost of products and services that they provide. In order to do that, let's take a look at some products and services that we use in our day-to-day lives. Hopefully you have a notebook in front of you. Hopefully you also have a pen that you're using to take notes down. You're probably watching this on a computer. We all have either water or soda in our house. You have cereal. You live in a house. We all use gas for our cars. Let's look at some services. Most of us go to hair salons, doctor's offices, and also most of us use auto services whenever our car breaks down or for tune-ups. How do companies that provide these services and products know how much it costs them to provide that service or product? So how much would it cost for them to manufacture a notebook, or how would a doctor's office know how much it costs them to provide you the service? From chapter 2, from the previous chapter's information, you know that all products have three components. All products have direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Those are the three components of every single product that is manufactured. How about services? Services aren't manufactured, so they don't have direct materials. However, they do have direct labor. They don't have manufacturing overhead. As I said, manufacturing overhead is whenever they manufacture something in a factory, but we do have costs that cannot be traced to the service, and we call those, if you remember, we call those indirect costs. So to summarize, every single product always has three types of costs. They've got direct materials that you can trace to the product, direct labor that can be traced to the product, and manufacturing overhead that cannot be traced but they have to be allocated. Services have two types of costs: direct labor that can be traced to the service, and indirect costs that cannot be traced, so they have to be allocated to the services that these companies provide. So for those products and services that we talked about, companies need to find a way to attach those costs to their products or service. So the word we use in managerial accounting is we say that companies accumulate costs to their product or service, and they need to find a way how to do that. They need to do that in order to find the total cost of their product, and the reason they need a total cost, one of the main reasons they need to figure out a selling price. There are other reasons, and you can go through your PowerPoints and be sure to know what the other reasons why a company needs to find the total cost. But one of the main things is, how do you know what to set your selling price at if you do not know the total cost of whatever you produce? Companies use two methods to accumulate their costs. Two methods are called job costing and process costing. And we're going to talk about job costing in this section. We will talk about process costing later. Job costing is used for unique products and services. For example, let's take a visit to the doctor's office. You could visit a doctor's office for many reasons. You could visit it for if you get the flu, or you could visit the doctor if you broke your arm. These two types of visits require different services. If you go for the flu, they'll probably do a flu test on you, write a prescription, and send you home. Whereas if you broke your arm, they'll have to take an x-ray, they'll probably have to set a cast, give you a prescription, and then send you home. The cost associated with each type of service is different. It's not the same cost that you spend. The doctor's office doesn't spend the same cost for both types of service. So what they do is they accumulate their cost by each different job. So costs are accumulated by job whenever a company uses job costing. So if you have the flu, they'll have what we will see later. It's called a job cost record, and they will accumulate all the costs that they spend for your visit. Whereas if you broke your arm, again, they'll have a separate record, and they'll say, okay, what are all the costs that went into your particular visit? That is called job costing. A lot of companies do job costing, and again, those are for unique products and services. Process costing is for mass-produced items. Let's take, for example, your pen. Each pen is the same. Your company, the that manufactured the pen probably makes 10,000 pens, a week. Each pen is identical to the other pen. There might be slight variances in color or, maybe the size of the tip, but everything else is the same. And those companies use what they call process costing. It's not practical for them to trace costs to each individual job. So what they do is very different. Companies that do process costing accumulate their costs by processes. So we will talk about that later. In this section, we're going to focus on job costing. Now let's take a look at those examples we looked at a while ago and classify those products into job costing or process costing. So first we talked about notebook. Notebook would be process costing. One notebook is no different from the other. Notebooks are mass produced. That would be process costing. Same thing for a pen. The pen would be process costing. How about our next item, a computer? Well, a computer, I would call that job costing, because think about if you buy a computer from Dell, what do? You customize your PC. You say you want a 1 terabyte hard drive, you want 8 gigs memory. So you're doing a little bit of customization, and they will attach or accumulate costs depending on what you order for your specification. Now, the individual components that go in there are probably done via process costing, but the computer is more of a job costing. Next, let's take a look at the water or the soda. Water and soda, bottled water or let's say Coke, those are identical cans. Those are mass produced. That would be process costing. Again, when you're going through these examples, keep in mind job costing is used by companies that typically produce unique products, and process costing is used by companies that mass produce. The other examples we had was cereal. That's again process costing. A house. A house is job costing. Each house is different. The square footage is different. The size is different. So, and everything that goes into the house. Whether you have hardwood flooring upgrades, whether you have solar roof installed, whatever you have in your house is customized. So that would be job costing. Gasoline, petroleum products. That's process costing. How about the services? Most services are job costing because those are individually catered to the specific job. If you go to a hair salon, you may request a haircut, you may request a coloring, or you may just request a style. Doctor's office, we talked about that. If you go to auto service, you may just require a oil change, which is a different job than if you want to do a tire rotation. So depending on what you do, each job is unique. So those would be costed using job costing. Companies that use job costing use what we call a job cost record to accumulate all the costs relating to that particular job. Among other things, the job cost record will always have 3 things. It will have direct materials. Remember, those are traced to the job. Direct labor, again, traced to the job. And they will have manufacturing overhead that we allocate to the job. Don't forget, direct materials and direct labor can be traced, but manufacturing overhead has to be allocated based on some criteria. And what we're going to talk about that criteria in a little bit. But you need to know that a job cost record always has 3 things. They will have other things as well, which we will see later, but always you need to know that if there's a job cost record for a product, it will have direct materials, it will have direct labor, and it will have manufacturing overhead. When you add those 3 up, you get the total cost of the job. Now, if instead of a product you're looking at a service, you still accumulate all the costs using a job cost record. Again, for a service company, you will have 2 things this time. You will have direct labor, and you will have indirect costs that are also allocated to the job. The total cost of your job is the sum of your direct labor and the indirect costs allocated. The direct labor can be traced to your job. Indirect costs have to be allocated based on some criteria.